So I want to make a very serious video. Um, I believe that there's a whole group of people who know that I'm Christ, who know that I'm God. Okay, they might have not accepted this 10 years ago because they would have looked at how shit the world is and then thought that either I'm an incredibly weak God or I'm not God, or I don't know what they thought. But over the last 12 years, I've showed more and more and more evidence that I am God, and I've showed more and more evidence that Christianity is the truth, that there is some sort of spirit that comes from God or from Christ, and it's been linking the world and a huge number of people to my daily life, proving that the spirit is true. I've also made in lots of my posts, um, you know, it, my sort of hatred towards Islam and their sort of belittlement of women and their basically inversion of everything I agree with. And I don't like Christianity, but there is truth in it because I know that I'm Christ. And if Christianity didn't exist, I wouldn't know that I'm Christ, and I wouldn't know what religion to prove who I am, because there needs to be a religion that worships Christ for me to think white spiritual things is happening to my life. I believe that I'm linking to people, thousands of people, millions of people through some sort of spirit. None of that would have made sense without Christianity. So I needed Christianity to explain who I am. And I know that there's a whole army of people that would serve that Christian God. And okay, 20 years ago, 12 years ago, they would have thought it was Jesus. But I've proved that it's me. And I've proved my hatred towards Islam. And I've also proved that I have a spirit that links to people and gets them to either have a similar mind or a similar viewpoint on many things, not on everything. But it's all through the spirit that's it's allowing this to happen. But if you're someone who's proclaiming that Islam is the truth, that Muhammad is the perfect example for how humans would be, that God loves being called Allah. I don't like anything, I don't like being called Allah. I don't like being in the Middle East. I would hate to wear those garments. I would hate to have to cover my hair. And if you're someone who looks at all the points in Islam, in Sharia law, and just thinks, yeah, I believe in this, then I don't think you have any spirit that connects to me at all. In fact, if anything, you have a spirit that makes you link to inversion. And I know that when it comes to inversion, there's inversion, which I guess is Allah, and then there's God, which is me, and then there's a spirit that kind of works in between people, but some people are more on this end, some people are more on this end. Now, just because you're more on this end, that doesn't mean that you're not a skilled person who can contribute to society. I feel like everyone on the scale has kind of rejected me, and therefore, I want people to be judged by their contributions and what they can do, their works, and how useful they are. There's a big long list of things, and it's not just about religion. But if you're going around promoting Islam and saying that Islam needs to be everywhere, you are on the lower side of that, because I hate Islam, and I hate the idea of immigration coming here, and therefore I'm confused as to why there are so many videos where the governments in Europe are supposed to be backing this migration, not just backing it, but taking taxpayers' money to fund it. And a part of me wonders, because I believe that this shadow government knows about me, and this shadow government knows that I don't like immigration, and it's causing me. I've been really, really tired over the last few days. I couldn't move my arms yesterday, like it was really heavy. Like, just felt like I felt like a stone, like I couldn't even lift my hands up. I don't know what that is, but I'm wondering if it's all lies, if everything that I'm seeing is on lies. I know the whole divide and conquer, and when it comes to Islam, well, first of all, I need to say there's way too many people on Earth. The world is being destroyed by overpopulation and people who have multiple births and just constantly birth. Like, people who act like rabbits and just pop out a baby every year and don't care if they can't feed them. I hate seeing starving children. I hate seeing suffering. But at the same time, if you can't look after them, it is better for that child to die then, and therefore I hate the people that would be like, these children are being murdered. It's like, yeah, well, they have no parents, they have no life, they're not safe any longer. These countries are very dangerous. England is becoming hugely dangerous because of all the migrants that are coming through. But how bad would the migrant countries be when the whole country is just full of these types of people that might be dangerous and stuff? And I know the whole divide and conquer. I think Islam kills through they kill a massive amount of people, and they do it through literal bloodshed on the street. But I know in the same way that the Illuminati can be just as deadly, only they do things in secret. And it's just making me wonder, maybe the whole encouragement, maybe all the videos online are about, come over to England, come over to Europe, come over to all these other different places and have free accommodation. But maybe the real plot twist is, we'll come over here, we'll give you free money. You make lots of videos where you show people, immigrants, being given £500 a month and free accommodation. You attract all the migrants over, and then when they're here, you say, okay, well, you can seek asylum. You just tick these boxes, and then you find out if they're Muslim. You find out if they, if they think Muhammad is a really good person and a good example, and then you just ask them basic questions, and if they fail the test, I don't know. I mean, technically, if you think about it, these migrants are in England. Their family might not necessarily know where they are. Okay, they might know they're in England, but they might just think that they rejected their asylum and they got sent back, and they just disappear. I mean, maybe, how do I know that all these migrant hotels aren't literally just about drawing up all the boat people and giving them some sort of test, and if they fail the test, how do I know they're not just like being taken to the basement and then just shot with a silence gun? How do we know that there's not like some sort of mass cremation? How do we know that there's not some facility where there's just some sort of mass cremation? I know what happened into the Jews is terrible, and everyone's promoting it as being terrible, but I feel like if people knew that God was on earth, and that God can tell you which people are on her side and which people are not, and why they're not. If there's a spirit of God that works within all people, and I know that billions of people can cope with this, can work well with the spirit. So it's not, and then there's billions in the middle that I don't know about, but that I also know that there's a way of working out which people do not have the spirit of God, and which people are acting more like animals and just don't don't deserve to be a human. There's loads of them, and it's not just Islam. There's a whole range of them. There's a whole huge number of people that are just terrible people, and a lot of people say that the Illuminati is dark and evil. And well, if it is, how do you know that it's not just pretending to help the migrants, giving them some sort of test to work out if they're a Muslim or not? If you're from a Muslim country and no longer have to call yourself a Muslim, why would you still call yourself a Muslim if you're not, if you didn't like them? If you're running away from the Muslim regime and all the sort of the bloodshed on the streets and the killings, if you think being a Muslim is all about peace because that's what some people tell you, and then you find out that actually they're just going around shooting the Houthis or the Jew dudes, or just different groups of people, the Yemens, I don't know, if you find out that, and then you think, I want nothing to do with this, you don't come to seek asylum in England while still calling yourself a Muslim. You start thinking, what, I'm going to redefine what my word Muslim actually means. I don't even like the sound Muslim. It sounds horrible. It sounds like it sounds gross. For me, that word sounds gross. Now, if you've got the spirit of God in you, you should have my spirit in me. And I feel basically paralyzed over the last 12 years, and I know part of this is the spirit that's coming out of me. And if you like the word Muslim, I don't. I really don't, and I see it with danger and violence and just darkness. And if you're someone who doesn't see that, then you don't have the spirit of God in you. And genocide is not a good idea unless, of course, there's way too many people in the world, and you just need to start making your enemy numbers lesser. I think a war is coming, and My life has been designed so that I can give advice to people. I've had a Hindu friend, I've had a Sikh friend. They were nice people. Okay, they didn't. Well, one I haven't spoken to for a very long time. A Hindu friend was when I was she was actually probably one of the only Hindu friends I've ever had. But she was at my first primary school, or was it second primary school? Second primary school for a long time, and a Sikh guy. I had a friend for the last few years. Haven't seen him again. Didn't believe that was God, but whatever. They're nice people. But I've never had a Muslim friend. I've never in my classes or anything. Muslim was just always something that, other than the clients. But I don't necessarily see them all as good people. And I don't know. But I know if someone tells me that they're a Muslim, I would not tell them about my religion. And I just, things like this, why wouldn't I tell them that? Because I'd feel like they might get offended over me saying that I'm God. Why would you get offended if someone believes that they're God because they've seen evidence? Why would that offend you? If I have evidence that you're wrong, why would you be offended by that? You shouldn't be offended by that. And if you are offended by that, it means that your ego is so big that you can't stand the possibility that you're wrong. And if you're someone whose your ego is so big that you want to kill other people for having a different view to yours, even though they might actually have some valid points, if you're that kind of person, then you don't deserve to be a human. And I don't know which Muslims are radical or which Muslims are just sympathizers. But come on, wearing a full veil, if that's part of your Muslim culture, this is torture. This is torture and belittlement of women. And if you can't see that, then you can't see real problems in your own beliefs. And it's just, it's Muslim is bad on so many different levels. And if the Illuminati is pretending this multiculturalism is all amazing, when really they're just trying to divide and conquer Islam. Hey Islam, come over to the Christian countries, we're all nice loving people, and then you show all the sort of people that are promoting Palestine. Yeah, we want to promote everything Palestine's doing, go kill the gays. Okay, we didn't know that. All right. Maybe that's what they're doing, and then secretly they're just taking people into the basement and then just giving them a quick cremation, and then telling their families that we sent them back to this place, and their families never hear from them again. But technically, if their families are just Middle Eastern people that don't have much money, that don't, a lot of migrants flee from one country to another because they don't have rich families, they don't have supported families. If migrants are coming from other places in Europe and are generally just like Poland or something, if there's migrants coming from Europe, they probably do have a strong background. If they have families that have wealth, phones and internet and computers. If you do a test to find out who these migrants are, and you find that there are some migrants that literally are just broke, have family, but maybe their family don't really contact them or something, if they went missing, how do you know they're alive? I wouldn't feel safe actually about going to America, because I feel like they don't treat their poor well, and if I went over there and something was to happen to me, and the government didn't want to sort of stop tourists from coming over, would they cover up my death? Yeah, probably. I mean, I could imagine them doing that. And would they not tell my parents? Well, they might, but they might realize that my parents don't actually. My mum's a little bit mad. My mum will probably go on about it forever, but she wouldn't have the intelligence to know how to talk to the media or talk to them. She wouldn't be able to do that because she's not that bright. She's very, very dumb. And my sister would just be thinking about herself. So, if I go missing, there's not that many people that would notice. I think if I died today, it would probably take a week or two for them to, probably take them about 2 weeks for them to even bother to come to my house to find out why I'm not picking up my phone. I don't know, but migrants would be even worse, because people in poor countries don't really have phones and internets and means of communication, or maybe they do, but yeah. I think it would be very easy to lie to migrants about how amazing being in England would be, when really there might be a darker plot that's unknown to me or to the public, because they don't want to talk about it. And you would say that that's not possible, but if I can prove that I'm God, and if I can prove that there is a spirit that's in me and connecting to people, and if I can say that I really don't like Islam, and yet anyone that claims to love it, why? Because it's not a link to me in any way. So you're loving something that's just nothing to do with me, even though it's supposed to be about God. I just, there's something spiritual going on there, and all the spiritual all the Muslims want to kill the Jews. So, if you come find and you have like a discussion with these people, maybe if you get them up in a hotel and then you add a bunch of spies in there to just have conversations with these people, I mean, that would be a very good thing. You get a hotel full of migrants, you put in a few spy migrants, which are not migrants but people who know about me, and then you ask them their questions and their views. Maybe it's a whole test. That would be interesting. I like tests, and I like Big Brother, and I don't like Big Brother any longer, but I still like the idea of putting lots of people in a house and then getting people in there to do tests and ask them questions. Ask them what they think about women covering up and the idea that God could be a woman, and see what they say. And maybe that's the whole point of these migrant hotels, to bring these people into the country, test them, and if they fail the test or respond badly to a lot of the answers in a negative way, one, you've got like a statistic about who the types of people are you getting rid of. In the Jew situation, when the Nazis just killed the Jews, it was sad, because a lot of those Jews were intelligent, working, skilled people. I mean, technically, I don't think it's that sad, because I think they all got reborn in Hollywood, which could explain why Hollywood is full of evil people, because I think a lot of them have suffered in a Holocaust cast, in a prison cell like that. So I feel like there might be a lot of anger over there because of that. But they're amazing at making films. And they can really take passion, and because maybe they felt it. I think it's a progression. If you have a strong emotional ability now, maybe you got that because of some sort of deep suffering, such as a Holocaust situation, where you're in a prison camp, not being fed, and you're dying, and then you are just literally killed. I suppose the level of suffering depends on how long you were in that. I think I feel more sorry for the survivors who have to live their whole life knowing that everything they had was taken away. And especially if you had a lot, if you had a working business and a good position in society, and that was all taken away, and you were left with nothing, and not even your health, because of being starved for many months. I just, it's awful. It's awful because there was no test. That was simply just killing the Jews. That wasn't a test of how smart or how evolved or how, it was that. And therefore, but if people knew in 10 years time, when I'm exposed as being God, that I'd gone through all this, and that I can tell you that I do not like Islam because of its belittlement of women, and it's everything in it is everything that I don't agree with, and therefore, if people knew that, and then knew that maybe the whole point of bringing all these migrants in is to test them, give them a proper test, give them a proper chance, and then take them out in the basement with a silenced gun, and is that what's happening? I don't know. Is it? But that to me makes sense. The idea that you're just inviting lots of people in, or taking... Thing is, though, I know that if you are getting lots of people in, you have to give them some sort of work, because otherwise they are going to turn to crime. If you've got 600 people living in a hotel and none of them have any money to buy food, they are going to turn to crime, because that is their only option. So Uber bikes, people are complaining that they're getting Uber bikes and stuff, and jobs and stuff, but at the same time, they need jobs. Otherwise, if they don't have money, then they're going to die. And when you're in that position, you will turn to crime because you want to live. And therefore you can't be surprised if a migrant who isn't allowed to work turns to crime, because they have no other option. What is their alternative? So I guess giving them free money is part of is a way of stopping them from turning to crime. But it would be interesting to see, even with the free money, how many of them find that that's not enough. I know that when it comes to sexual assault questions and you know, accusations, people might just hate the migrant hotels and deliberately be starting causing trouble by saying he did this and he did this when really he didn't, and it would be very hard to prove. You know, that the standard on both sides is bad, and that's the biggest problem. That just the standard in the whole world is just incredibly bad. That a victim isn't just a victim because they say they're a victim and stuff. So, but yeah, it's because the standard is just so bad that I feel like the idea of just taking out the ones who definitely failed, e.g. the ones that are loving Islam, even though God really hates it, so clearly they don't have the spirit of God in them. You know, I shouldn't be posting things like this on YouTube, but according to my videos, no one's watching them, so why should I be not say stuff if you're making it look like no one's watching my videos?